It's been well over a year since anti-Shadowlands sentiment peaked, and the loving embrace of Final Fantasy XIV was there to console and bring players to, literally, a whole new world. There were maybe like 1,000 reasons, maybe 10,000 reasons why the mass migration ultimately happened, but a lot of it boiled down to like one single like important core point. WoW story bad, FF story good. Endwalker is continually showing its upward trend and it shows absolutely no sign of stopping. But what about World of Warcraft? Is it continuing its headlong dive into the abyss? Well, I spent the past week or so gently, very gently, combing through Dragonflight's beta story campaign, just to answer the burning question. Did Blizzard actually learn from Final Fantasy XIV? Did their devs play it? Did they watch what people are saying and go, okay, let's figure this out? Well, I did find an answer and I'll share it with you today. Welcome to a beta review of the Dragonflight story by all means, a Final Fantasy XIV evangelist. First things first.
Ren, they make it easy for you to do good, and the first 100 follow my link will have their first month covered for free. The planet's in trouble, right? It's hard to feel like you can do much about it though. Maybe you see an Attenborough documentary, you see shots of a beautiful rainforest and then it being destroyed, and it's pretty damn depressing really. That's why Ren is exciting. Their whole mission is to first let you understand your own carbon footprint and then do something about it through a monthly contribution that is tailored to your own footprint and what goals you want to achieve, and with transparency, because you'll learn where that money is going to, how it's being put to work. Right now, they're supporting the likes of biochar in California, which is to sequester carbon and to prevent wildfires, which is a major issue over there. There's tree planting in Africa, over 20 million so far, and a really cool project that's using tech to preserve the Amazon. It's straight up using drones and satellites to help the indigenous people detect and prevent deforestation, which is honestly awesome. It's great work. It gives us the power to reduce and offset our own footprint by supporting brilliant projects across the world, and I've actually been with them myself for ages now. I mean, time and complexity is the barrier to helping out, and that is exactly what they handle for you. So the first 100 who sign up will get their first month covered, and yeah, that's awesome. So hit up the link down below. Thrilled to have them on board. Let's go.
A disclaimer. This is beta, so there are missing voice lines, unfinished cutscenes, and minor details can all be changed and actually changed in the middle of me playing, but it is late enough in beta that most major things are locked in, except for the last campaign step, which was completely missing when I played last, and that means the live version should be the same, more or less, but a hell of a lot more polished, which should mean better, and with one more climactic moment, but as we get into, that's not necessarily a good thing. So, how does Dragonflight, the story, actually feel to play? I know the TikTok generation wants a soundbite, so I've been blown away with how much better Dragonflight's story feels to play. There you go. There are so many more instances of getting to know characters and having them develop in a short time that it's kind of out of this world. The Dragon Isles are ultimately reminiscent of Pandaria, where, we landed, we found a whole array of people, they had personality, they had history, all these events that were happening, had happened, and will happen. And that was told to us in a way that's more natural, more enjoyable, more real, more like physical than the metaphysical nightmare that was the Shadowlands that ruined the afterlife forever. But saying that, the game's A-plot, that's where all the big important events, the reason you go do things, the kind of the impetus to go, that's still its glaring weak point, and it feels like they learned very little, if anything at all. Which is frustrating. They do slowly build towards themes and characters, and I can appreciate that when they do it well, when they try, but honestly, every time I got forced back to the plot, I was disappointed in how it was going because, quite frankly, it completely sucks compared to side quests. If I were to compare it to FF, I would say this. Final Fantasy is big single-player JRPG vibes, so it has a character-first focus on this engrossing plot with dozens and dozens of hours of dialogue, but because it's an MMO, it also has a deep and believable world, right? Eorzea, eventually all the Theros, is the character. And no matter what, World of Warcraft could never live up to that standard JRPG story. Which means it has to be itself. It has to have atmosphere. It has to have smaller stories to build a sense of this lived-in world for you to explore. It needs factions of real feeling people. It needs real conflict between them. And it means that ultimately quests have to have a purpose beyond being the game system's like reward abstraction. As the last few years, FF14 figured out how to do all of that better, while WoW actively got worse. So now it's WoW's time to be inspired. Did they do it? Well, It's still limited by how characters can emote, by camera controls, by framing, and basically the limitations of being a completely different game, but it has made some gains. But it's also still a really basic story, and it's too distracted and focused on like plot and lore and like kind of the rational parts to deliver like a satisfying emotional through line. But where FF started to be, well, where it starts to, it makes you fall in love with the people of the world. You help them with their problems, you learn their kind of idiosyncrasies, their unique little bits. You're feeling like your questing has real purpose. Dragonflight is like one step on the path to getting those fundamentals right, and I was genuinely surprised by it. The core conceit of Dragonflight is that there are 4 factions, well, beyond the dragon plot, there are 4 factions you get a reputation with over the course of the game. And the leveling process is purely designed for you to get to know the people involved. Not just the named characters, but the entire faction. And this process is done so much better than Shadowlands Covenants. It's actually insane. They set it up for a big, long end game. Basically, they've done a good job. But let's get past the meta talk and actually talk about literally how they did it, because these are the lessons they learned, and obviously this necessitates spoilers. So I think there are 3 techniques that Dragonflight learned from FF, but there's also a lot it still needs to. But the first one they learned is actually kind of the big one, right? They learned to slow down. They learned to slow the hell down and let the environment and its characters, the characters in the environment, tell the story. Basically, attention to detail. The imperceptibles that make a game really sing, they've got a lot of that down. The first example is actually, before we even get on the boat to leave, you're in this capital city, right? You want to go, you want to play, you want to level. Modern media says, shock and awe, you go fast, you go quick, you get people in. But this time, they had the courage to go slow. You spend a bit of time speaking to characters to put together your expedition, because that's one of the factions, and they are ultimately all core parts of the endgame later on. But where they are in the city, the situations they're in, how they respond to you showing up and recruiting them, telling them where to go, it was all fun. They didn't have to do this, but they did. And then to get on the boat, you physically wait. It's on a couple-minute timer, which gives you all the time you need to speak to a bunch of optional NPCs, and they all share little tidbits about themselves or the expedition you're about to go on, how they feel about it, what their plans are. And then you get on the boat. And there's more of that on the boat, because the journey takes a little while, not very long, but obviously there's a bunch of players on the boat as well, so you want to talk to someone in real life, go for that. But there's also NPCs in the cabin and downstairs and stuff, and they all have just a little bit of character. They're one-dimensional, right? But they kind of talk about what it's like to be on the boat from their perspective, being, a mechanome, being a Dark Iron Dwarf, being a Life Force Draenei. And it's all stuff that people were really missing, stuff that makes the world feel just a teensy tiny bit more alive. Then when you actually start on the Dragon Isles itself, the trend, mostly continues. Characters just talk your ear off in ways I completely didn't expect, and also ways you can ignore if you're tracking your experience per hour, that kind of player. But if you're willing to try to really enjoy the world, it's there for you. And I don't mean that in just a, just lower your standards, bro, kind of way, but legitimately. I took, had notes just taken while I was playing. I kind of do that with all that stuff, but most of them ended up being just the little touches, right? The little things that make a game feel real. You can feel the artistry, right? The individual touch of the designer. They were okay, well, you can imagine the process of making something going, what if I do this? What if I do this? Oh, I've had an idea. The idea of someone, instead of just going, what's the bare minimum? Done. That shows up sometimes, but it showed up a lot more in Shadowlands than it does now. So there's a lot more of what I guess I could call individual creativity that you can feel. Just a teensy tiny bit of soul. My favorite zone so far has been the second one, because the people you meet there, the Centaur, are fully realized as tribes, right? They're people with their own cultures, their own trials, their own tribulations. And Blizzard's commitment to slow but sure shows here again. In something that's kind of unprecedented, you cross the entire zone slowly in a caravan. They are just talking to you, talking to each other, a little bit of banter, but they're also telling stories. And it provides a good sense of myth and history for the Centaur. And then later on, of course, because this is what writing is, multiple parts of the myth combined with the current affairs of the Centaur, it comes together and kind of informs how this dramatic scene unravels. And the setup, the reveal, and the little twist at the end are all executed basically to perfection. And it's a standout moment for me, in the same kind of way that I'm thinking of another example from World of Warcraft. The Mists of Pandaria, when the Jade Serpent statue gets destroyed and you're oh shit, this is kind of our fault. This is not what's like with Centaur, but I wasn't expecting that. That's actually kind of big. That has all of these, not just literal consequences, but it actually has like philosophical or cultural consequences too. Oh shit, that's actually a terrible thing. And that actually worked. And they set it up to the point where I was like, oh, I kind of saw that coming, but it didn't go exactly how I expected. And I was like, oh, that's writing 101. You've done the fundamentals properly. Hell yeah, hell yeah. And that's them learning from FF, right? Where you need preparation, you need to earn your big moments. So later on, you're going to join an assault and you inspect equipment. You review plans, you speak to like the scouts and stuff. You get characters who give a genuine opinion in the battle, and then you all go in. Later on, you know, at this point, you dive off a cliff on your dragon to do this dragon riding. And there's like 2 dragons fly ahead of you. You're jumping down, it's this base below you, so you've got this high ground. And you see, you know, if you turn your camera, you see the army all behind you mobilize. They're all setting out to like assault this base. And it feels like a genuine base assault. It doesn't feel like just, oh yeah, go in and kill a couple things. I'm like, oh no, these are all my people. I spoke to them. I told them what to do. I was kind of, not literally, but almost like kind of lieutenant, kind of commander of this. And I jumped off and dove with physics down this like actual cliff. That was, how to put it? It was more interesting than like a single moment in World of Warcraft has felt gameplay-wise in a long time. Basically, they're getting the fundamentals done. And they even do that with characters as well, where they realize that characters actually have to talk to you about how they're feeling. And Caligos is a great example of this. He starts this like personal journey that's really on the nose, really obvious, you know, subtext is for cards, but it lets it stand out and you kind of feel it. There are loads of little victories like that all over the place in Dragonflight. Way more than there were in Shadowlands. There's little bits of silly humor, side quests that kind of subvert what you expect for humor and go a little bit dark. Then there's side quests that appear at first glance to lean really dark, but they pull it back at the last second for like a little bit of comic relief after, you know, you've been through some stuff. So here's a joke. One unexpected joke in the side quest actually had me laugh out loud. Like I was alone in my room at night and I literally laughed out loud. And that might be like the first time that's ever happened to World of Warcraft in my, I don't know how many years of playing now. I could go on for ages here. Like with the Centaur I was talking about, the Iskar are kind of the same, right? The plight of their people was really strong and it was communicated. So there's a funeral for their old chieftain that you help prepare for. And the process of going through that told me so much about their culture and their shared philosophy on life, like as a people, all while you also learn about some individuals and how they handle it. It was just like, oh, you're doing menial stuff, but there's a reason for it, there's a purpose to it, and it feels good. And it's the same for a lot of characters you meet, especially early. The culture that like they're involved in becomes really apparent, but in ways that emotionally resonate with you, right? Same with like the Black Dragonflight Leadership Challenge. It's just some dialogue, it's just some people talking, but it becomes more than that because it kind of informs how you feel about the world, how you feel about the characters. And it's stuff that either wasn't there in Shadowlands or didn't land when it was there. And now to me, I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt, but I'm playing through and I'm genuinely enjoying this. And another part is like, you know, cutscenes, right? There are loads more cutscenes. Unfortunately, a ton of them are unvoiced and unfinished on beta at the minute, so I can't really like give a comment on their quality. But from what I did see, I'm like, okay, well, if I imagine a really good cutscene in this place, or one of like the 9.2 cutscenes and how they like have decent animation tech and lip sync and stuff and all of the facial lighting and movement, it's nothing compared to, you know, what the Hildebrand stuff let the FF team kind of evolve into, but it's still a step up. Now, the second technique they learned is to let things happen. As in, things in the world that don't have anything to do with us. Other characters are people, they have agency. The world moves without us. And this is handled in like a few ways, right? There's times where we run into events as they're happening. We're coming down the road and, you know, there's some fighting started, or, you know, there's some blood in the caravan. Oh shit, something's gone wrong. Okay, let's help out. But one of the things that was important was usually you do everything, or characters guide you to do everything. And over in FF, the Scions are these like super capable and awesome party members. They can handle whatever's thrown at them, each with their own like roles, their own specialties. And that's what makes them feel like real people. Because you go, hey, Stola, go sort that out. And she's like, yeah, no problem, that's my specialty. Or Andre comes back and goes, here's all the shit I've learned, here's all the stuff. And they push the story forward when they're not there. World of Warcraft, on the other hand, basically feels like it's full of NPCs a lot of the time. But this time, we have Khadgar go handle some magic stuff. And he's busy, so we need to do stuff without him. So instead of being our babysitter, he's like an actual character. He gives us a little bit of help through like this bag of tools that we kind of dig through, and it's kind of funny in his way. But it's also like, all right, Khadgar, you go that way, sort that out. I'll go this way, sort it out. That feels, it's not as good as it sounds, but it's definitely like aping a little bit of that. Like, these characters are actually there. They're actually people doing stuff in the world. The world moves like them. That makes the world feel alive. And that's something that hasn't really felt that way in quite a while. It's mostly just been, oh, Champion of Azeroth shows up. Events go forward. Done. Or events go forward in a book. That's about it, really. The third thing they learned then, I think, is to let the player character think and feel, and to be a character instead of just an abstraction for gameplay. The amount of call-outs that like actually happen from other characters to your character in voice, going, oh, hey, yeah, could you come help us? It makes you kind of feel a little bit alive. Same with how quests now, a lot of them start, where usually it's, you click accept, quest starts. Now for a lot of those, it's like you click accept, and then it says speak to X. So you speak to them, you click them again, and there's just one clickable line of dialogue that will progress the quest, but it's your character saying something. It's your character going, hey, right, so what happens next? Or, hey, let's go do this, or something like that. And it makes you feel a little bit like an actual, I guess, actor in the world, instead of this abstraction for person who completes quests to get XP. Feels a little bit more like a world, and a little bit less like just a video game. And that's what that's what World of Warcraft has really, really needed. That got better again whenever your character's kind of interacting with an object, and there's just a little bit of internal monologuing. It's just it's baby steps, but it is like the character now exists as part adventure, part Champion of Azeroth, kind of meeting new people, doing stuff, having their own thoughts, having their own opinions. Whenever that happened, like back in Classic, it was really on the nose, really kind of prescriptive. But this time it's small enough to make me kind of feel, oh, hell, yeah. Ultimately, my takeaway from Dragonflight's quest content so far is that the devs kind of hit their stride, right? They give characters more screen time, they allow a higher density of dialogue, and they tell micro stories, like little small character stories, at a much more aggressive pace. And those are things they definitely like. You could see they took it from FF14 a lot of the time, but you can also see in the flavor of them, in the character of them. They're still very World of Warcraft. And that implies to me that they aren't just going, shit, what do we do? Copy, copy, copy. They're going, okay, what is it that players want? What is it what players want? Because obviously you could try to copy the grandiose story, but that would be hard to do. That would be impossible to do within the bounds of being World of Warcraft. So they fully just went, all right, people want more world building? Let's give them more world building. People like the side quests in 9.2? Let's give them more of that. There's so much of Dragonflight's main story that, like, the best parts of it are they feel more like side quests, to be honest. They feel more like side quests that have been jammed into the kind of main campaign, but not in like a really rough way. More like they have the flavor of side quests. They have the flavor of, oh, who's this character? Oh, we'll meet you, we'll learn about you, etc., etc. It doesn't get caught up in doing a plot all the time. It has a lot of moments going, okay, well, let's not think about the Dragonflights, the dragons, for like an hour or two. Let's just meet the Centaur and go through their story, go through their life. It'll tie back in, but it's about them. Same with the Iskar. It's just, let's go through this stuff and learn these people, and off you go. Same with like some of the Black Dragonflight, where that's not so much the core story of it, the Primalists is more, as much as it is, hey, here's some characters. Here's some conflict. Here's some people. Here's some, I guess, here's just some populations that live in the world. What's up with them? And that's the parts of World of Warcraft that I remember liking. Because I've been playing, Wrath Classic lately, and those are the stories that World of Warcraft did well. Like I said at the top of the video, it's atmosphere. It's atmosphere, it's those ideas. It does that stuff pretty damn well. But, of course, we also have to talk about what they didn't learn. The A-plot is completely full of unnatural moments of, oh, you're done here, fuck it, go here next. There's MacGuffins that, despite them trying to convince me like they're important, they seem to have absolutely no meaningful difference on the world or the impact whatsoever. Nothing in the situation. Except, trust me bro, this means something. It's not too far from the Sigils 2.0 in a sense. Not quite as bad, but it very much feels that way of, what are these? Then, the main villain's motivation, man. Their motivation isn't engaged by any character whatsoever, right? There's teasing for the player. Oh, Titan's bad. But that teasing is so little behind it because none of the main cast, none of the characters of the story are engaging with what they're saying whatsoever. There's even bits where, like, you know, they're kind of infiltrating people by, I guess, ideological subversion. And that isn't addressed at all. It's just, they're telling our guys that we're bad, go kill them. Right? That's not emotionally intelligent at all. That's, with the fact that characters ignore that sets up this real expectation of players going, what's this about? Why are all the characters in this place absolute morons? Why is no one thinking of this? They're very smart characters, but why does no one go, hello, excuse me, these primalists have a problem? Has anyone stopped to ask them what the problem is? Or are we just gonna, indiscriminately murder? And that's kind of it. It's indiscriminate murder, as opposed to this, like, new trend of what people want from their games, which is intelligent storytelling and, like, emotionally relevant. Oh, hey, you're a villain? Okay. Why are you a villain? Let's get to the bottom of that. None of that is here whatsoever. There are all these heavy hints that the primalists are, like, disaffected, right? There's even one of them has, like, the Teldrassil burn scar, and I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. And then no one talks about it. Especially, that's a terrible mistake. You think about FF, the best moments are Emet-Selch. The best moments are Elidibus. The player realizes the enemy is just another person trying to do what they feel is best. It makes the stakes strong. It makes the stakes feel personal. Rather than just going, cartoon bad guy. Oh, villain, like, Primus, what are they? Bad dragons? Kill them. Easy. Sorted. It has to be more than that. And in the writer's room, it certainly is. But to the characters involved, and thus to the players, because that's the lens of how we view the story, they're just bad guys. And if they don't solve that problem, Dragonflight will be clowned upon in the same way that Shadowlands was. Because it's fundamentally, all the good I talked about at the start of this video, the last 20, nearly 30 minutes of me talking, going, this is good, this is an improvement, these are all the parts of the game that now has soul. If the actual main through line isn't communicated to players very well whatsoever, and isn't communicated through character dialogue, isn't communicated how characters feel, then you're going to just have a repeat. And there's nothing you can do about that if this isn't solved. Hopefully in, like, the last bit, hopefully in some endgame stuff that shows up, hopefully in, like, the raid storyline we get to see that. But if it is just cartoon bad guy, get them killed, then people will see this like a Shadowlands 2, even if it's got all of these improvements. And that's the frustrating thing. It happened to BFA. There was a lot of side content that was pretty okay. Shadowlands, a lot of side content, pretty okay. I hope this isn't the same. But of course the complaints don't end there, because there's more clowning that's possible, and it shouldn't be. Remember all that Centaur story I was just praising? The point was, a betrayal happens from within, but the entire scene felt like complete nonsense. The logic behind, like, the combat strength, the numbers, the actual fight, didn't make any sense. I genuinely wrote down in my notes, I don't understand why we lost. Power is so completely undefined, so, like, that time I felt like my character should have been able to turn the tides, based on what I was literally just finished doing, but the plot was like, no, you lost. And then at another point, this massive terrifying enemy was established, right? Established this big, awful, terrible thing, genuinely like, oh shit, that must be like a dungeon boss. And then I killed it a few seconds on myself. In a few seconds. Literally, pop, berserk, hammer, first bet a couple times, gone. It's mind-boggling how, for all of the other detail they get right, these details they get wrong leave a really bad taste in your mouth. And everyone's going to feel the same way. And they need to clean up these little tiny bits of things, but because otherwise people will just clown. And that's the thing, they will lose the narrative like they did before. The worst example of this is, I can't believe this. A character describes their sadness and regret at killing these corrupted enemies, right? Life is precious. It's a shame we have to do this. And then, not 5 minutes later, you're literally killing hundreds of these enemies on a flying book. It's not fun to play because vehicle combat's there. And it completely takes this tasteful, emotionally engaging, like, quest line that really sold me on this faction that I'm going to spend the rest of Dragonflight playing with. And it just went, oh, it's time for humor? Wait, So we're supposed to feel bad about killing these guys, and then we just go on, like I'm talking hundreds of them just in an instant dead, and it's a tonal shift. It's a tonal shift that like I still like the quest line, but it was at the end just sorry, we forgot how to tell story. I don't know what it is about their idea of like just losing the narrative the last second, losing the tone there, but it's the stuff they really need to stop doing. So, is Dragonflight's main story good so far? Define good. If I were to give it a number, right? Remembering this is ranked as a WoW expansion campaign, not the full expansion or just a normal game, it averages out to a fairly short but a fairly solid 7 out of 10. But that's only if you give it your all, right? If you take your time to do side quests, where most of the quality is, if you read the text, you pay attention to the environment, etc., you can't go slow. You go slow and enjoy it. If you expect it to be a guided, railroaded experience to level through quickly, you're looking at a 4, maybe 5 out of 10. Personally, and this is completely personal and subjective, I would say I'd maybe give it like an 8 out of 10 or so, because I actually love World of Warcraft. I love that vibe, the whole idea of it. And Dragonflight's vibes hit right. When they hit right. When they miss, they really miss. But when they hit right in a way that like few other games actually get for me. And you can tell the Dragon Isles is like a world they've tried super hard to build. The production value and their execution is, as well as their willingness to be themselves, that really stands out. And even if some of it's a little rough around the edges, the artistry shines through. It's just up to the rest of the game's design, as an MMO, not to make players feel like absolute shit like BFA and Shadowlands before it. On that, there's some hope because dragon riding's fun, the talent trees are fine at least for my specs, and then crafting and gathering may have some kinks to work out people have been talking about recently, but in my experience of trying to play with them, they feel like pretty good additions to the average player. And if they continue this good character work, this good faction work all through endgame, and if they continue that through patches with all of these characters that they really, really like spend a lot of time building, this will be a decent expansion, at least on this front. As for the rest of it, they sure seem to have a lot less bullshit than Shadowlands did, which, can't be very hard. And that's a direct response to players singing tales of how FF14's like, players, play whenever you want, come back whenever the hell you want. What's that? You want to play everything? Just work away. It's you. This is your game. Work away. But then Shadowlands felt like that until 2 weeks after it was out, and we went, what the fuck is this? So don't pre-order. I guess that's the takeaway here. Don't pre-order, but there's a little bit of hope, I guess, through this. That's the awkward part, right? Where you try to review something and realize it would take you about 6 hours to get through everything, review-wise even, never mind playing it for whatever. But fundamentally, the story content of Dragonflight and questing, if you're willing to give it the benefit of the doubt and willing to sit down and read through it, it actually feels good. I know people have, I guess, when I talk about how the developers put themselves into it and are very open with with the stories they want to tell, there's some of that will rub people the wrong way. But as far as an overall holistic game experience goes, I don't think any of it was too distracting. It's something you can clown on, sure, but I don't think it was very distracting. I don't think it was a problem in any sense. I think it's fundamentally the developers are starting to, maybe it's just, something changed in their production pipeline where they have more staff, so they're allowed to spend more time, because that's what the difference I feel is. I feel like they had more time, more freedom. They got to sit down and go, well, I want to do this. I want to do this. It feels like they, the difference between when you finish something and you leave it to the last second to finish it just in time versus you finish it a week early and then, you're up to your game for improving it and stuff. So you sit and ideas come to you. It feels like that was possible. And I feel like that's when a game is actually, dare I say it, good. But that is one small part of the puzzle. We will absolutely have to tell you how it actually goes once the game goes live soon. TM ? So don't pre-order. Play 6.3 because 6.3 will probably be out around the time of Dragonflight, and then wait to see what people say. But fundamentally, I guess to give you a really clear answer, has World of Warcraft Dragonflight learned anything from Final Fantasy? And the answer is yes. It's learned a lot. It's learned exactly what it should be learning. and it's not learned any particularly wrong lessons. That's an important part. It's not learned wrong lessons, it's learned the right lessons. But there are also a lot of lessons it still has to learn. As for why, that's very hard to know, but that is fundamentally my takeaway so far. I will try to get through, play endgame, play some more content, and see if I can kind of get it from the more MMO-y perspective as opposed to the story perspective, because that's what I got. But so far, that's the takeaway. The answer is yes, and also no. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this was a helpful enough review, despite not going into too many details. Honestly, I'm an anti-spoiler kind of guy. I don't like to kind of ruin someone's experience by talking about all this stuff too much. So I hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much, and I will see you next time.